Hi, everybody. It's Todd. So listen carefully to the introduction of this podcast. I'll explain it more after you listen to it, but here's what I want you to listen for. Listen for how long it takes to go from normal to crisis. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Pre-Accident Investigation Podcast. I am your host, Todd Conklin. So what do you think about that intro? So let me give you some context for that, because the context for that really makes a difference. That is the actual vessel data recorder, audio recording from the Costa Concordia when it grounded in the Mediterranean. And that little clip is going to be a theme that we talk about in today's podcast. I think you're going to like it. We're going to talk about understanding normal practice in order to understand critical failure. So I hope you're doing good. I'm really looking forward to spending time with you today. This will be fun. We're going to have a great time. A nice little discussion. A gentleman by the name of NIppin Anand, who you'll like a lot. He's in the UK. He's a safety thinker, just like you are, a reliability, and he's really kind of a resilience guy, a resilience thinker. We're all kind of in the same family. We're cousins. And NIppin is done a bunch of research, but one thing NIppin did was get to actually talk to the vessel master of the Costa Concordia. And we've even got a clip of that he offered to put in the podcast. So it's a pretty good day. Other than the excitement of today's podcast, every day just gets more and more interesting. I don't know if you're noticing this. Are you noticing this? As the weather, at least in North America, becomes more spring-like, I think I become happier. You can call it seasonal affect disorder. Isn't that what they call it? SAD? Seasonal affect disorder. But a little snow goes a long ways with me. I'll just put it that way. We don't have to belabor this conversation, but it's a long journey for me. Everybody seems to be doing good. Life is grand. I haven't had any major exciting blow-ups anywhere in a plane, although people are having them. I'm fortunately, knock on wood, they're not happening to me, and so that's a plus. I like that much. I'm all for that. And I hope to see you soon, other than just in the airport. I am seeing a lot of people in the airport now, and that's kind of fun as well. Perhaps I can spend some time with you, and we can hang out and have a great time doing stuff. That would be really good. But until then, let's jump into the pod, because I actually think this podcast I like what this podcast says. I like the way NIppin's research has led him to a place where all of us, I think, can resonate. And that is that's a great piece of information. So listen carefully. We're having a little conversation, and I'll talk to you more, actually, even inside the podcast, but I'll talk to you more about this once we get it started. But here is the Pre-Accident Podcast, a conversation with Todd and NIppin around economics and resilience and the Costa Concordia and normal. Enjoy.
My name is NIppin, and originally come from India. I have been sailing on deep sea ships, containers, car carriers, etc. for almost 11 years. And at 29, when I achieved my license as a master mariner, I decided to call it a day. I came to the UK, originally come from India, I said that before, and I came to the UK to do a master's course in shipping economics and at Cardiff University in Wales. And I did well. I scored a distinction there, but it wasn't really something I wanted to pursue. I had the opportunity. I was sponsored by the Nippon Foundation of Japan, thankfully, to do a PhD in social sciences from there, and particularly looking at the maritime labor market. And I then spent about 3.5 years at Cardiff University doing my PhD. And then I moved to University of Nottingham Business School as a research fellow. I was doing a small project on the risk and resilience of critical national infrastructure, taking seaports as the focus. So the interesting question was, what is the link between risk and resilience? So I think that's where the seeds were sown. And I started to get very interested in risk and safety management kind of work. I then moved to my current employers, where I work as a safety inspector. And it's been about 6 years now. I've been working as a safety inspector. I have huge interest in safety management system and human factors. In fact, it was about 2.5, 3 years ago, I remember I attended a master class from Sidney Dekker in Amsterdam. And from that point onwards, I started to get very, very interested in this evolving concepts of safety and resilience. So, yeah, that's where I am right now. I work part-time on my own. I write papers. I quite enjoy doing workshops, conferences, things like that. And I have an interest in safety one, safety two kind of thinking. So yes, Todd, I don't know if that gives you a fair bit of an idea of who I am. And yes,
excellent overview. What did you learn when you were looking at the link between risk and resilience? I'm very curious about that. That piqued my interest.
So basically, Todd, this was a study looking at the critical national infrastructure of the UK. Hypothetically speaking, if there was UK being an island and whose economy is primarily dependent on maritime transport. Hypothetically speaking, if there was, for example, a ship sinking at the entrance of the channel, or a natural disaster, calamity, what would be the impact on UK's PLC? And then how would the economy bounce back to performing as normal? So we were trying to see what was the relationship between the risk and resilience of the national infrastructure. And the study was designed in a way that we had a simulation engineer, a group of simulation engineers, psychologists, and experts from maritime industry. So you're trying to understand if there was any link between risk and resilience. And one interesting thing that came up was the role of local communities and also the if you like, the experiential knowledge of many people which we take for granted, that comes so useful, which is far away from prescribed rules and procedures, and that comes extremely useful in these kind of situations, and that's what makes a system resilient. If you see where I'm coming from.
Oh, completely. It's interesting to me that your background. So how similar is your background in economics with your newfound passion for the new view of safety, the sort of the safety differently approach. How much of an advantage has that been?
I think the background in economics has certainly helped a lot, and I suppose one thing that comes extremely very useful is understanding and approaching things more holistically. So, if you like, if you want to understand safety, you have to first of all understand how the business works. What is the business model? How does the company generate revenue? Where are the profits? Where are the pressure points? You cannot just talk about safety. You have to talk about the economics. I think that's the starting point, to me at least. So many people talk about safety management system. I think and jump into understanding safety. But to my mind, you cannot understand safety without understanding how an organization functions and where the revenue actually comes from. Todd, what I also see something very interesting. I don't know if you noticed that or not, but I think if you really want to understand safety, then you've got to talk to technical people. They are the people who understand safety extremely well, inside knowledge.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes the system safe. Yes, I agree with you. Economists have a very good understanding of safety, and so do the technical people. And you get very pure knowledge out of them, actually.
Well, I agree with you. I think the people who actually perform the work are much better equipped at understanding how to create really success.
Yes, but also, Todd, there is an element of natural sciences which is more determinist in nature, which kind of, no matter how much we critique it, it's still very pure. So when you speak to somebody who has an engineering mindset, who has a technical mindset, he can only give you an answer one way or the other, and which I find very interesting when you engage with. I work a lot with engineers, and I find their world is very pure, if you like.
Yes, very linear, very predictive. Yes, that's true. They like that.
Yes,
they like the elegance of engineering.
They do, isn't it? Yes.
What got you interested in the Costa Concordia?
Okay, so Todd, all good things start over a cup of coffee, and I was in 2017, myself and Oyster Hildeberg from the Danish Maritime Accident Investigation Board. We were sitting down in London. We had a meeting for something else, and we were having a cup of coffee. And we started discussing about accidents in general, and then the topic of Costa Concordia came up. So I and him have always been, if you like, we were always very curious about this accident. We felt that we wanted to learn more about this accident, more than what is understood in the public domain. So Oyster and I started having a discussion, and it came towards the end. We came to the conclusion that we had to at least give it a try and see if we can reach out to somebody who can give us access to the captain of the vessel. So we spoke to an organization in Norway called Skagerrak Foundation, and Skagerrak Foundation has been a supporter, if you like, of the captain of this vessel. So Skagerrak Foundation then linked me to the captain of this goes back to 2017 January. So I set up a Skype call with the captain. I obviously forwarded a few papers that I'd written before. So he offered to speak with me on Skype. And then I had another couple of Skype calls just to build that reputation and rapport. And it worked out. We had an opportunity to fly to Sorrento, his hometown in Meta, in Italy. We spent about 4 days in his hometown. We did a lot of interviews, video interviews. We had a lot of informal discussions over coffee, over meals. We did an awful lot of document analysis, looked at the data recorder, etc. And the idea was never to kind of claim any sort of objectivity or one truth. It was more of our story, our experiences of engaging with somebody who was first-hand involved in an accident. So, which I found extremely very interesting. So, yeah, I don't know if that answers your question.
What'd you learn? Tell me what'd you guys discover?
So, we had a lot of discussions, and the way we set it up was, Todd, we encouraged the captain to just talk to us about himself, his background as a person, trying to understand him before anything else. And then we also spend some time in the city just to get a sense of the socio-cultural kind of background where he comes from. What is the importance of the town? How does it relate to his world and things like that? And then we moved into, after we got to understand him a little bit, and then we slowly moved into the accident, how it happened, and then we looked into the post-accident kind of consequences and things like that. It was a very chronological kind of approach, but and we allowed it to take its own toll. Of course, he had a tendency to go into every direction, which is understandable. So once we did that, and then we kind of built a narrative, and then on the last day itself, it was some probing questions about things that we did not understand well. So yeah, that was kind of the data collection technique that we used. But generally speaking, there were about 3 or 4 themes that came out from that analysis that we are still in the process of doing. One was what you call what is understood as a normal practice of sailing close to islands, as he described in one of his quotes, which I found extremely very interesting to explore further. The second bit was how come a team of professionals could not notice a big ship heading straight into the rocks. So, if you like, in a wider context, what was the team dynamics on the bridge of that vessel? And if you want to take it even further, a question to be asked is, how do we think a team of professionals come together and perform to achieve a goal, and if there is such a thing as a common goal? So that was another question that thematically speaking, that was extremely very interesting. And then it was the emergency procedures, contingency plans, and things like that, how they work in practice. That was another theme that came up from this discussion, from this analysis. And finally, this whole idea of the captain leaving the ship before all the passengers were evacuated. So trying to understand that side of things as well. So yeah, so about 4 of these themes that we are currently analyzing and kind of writing some papers and presenting around the world. I think it's been a remarkable learning, Todd. And to my mind, I think what's unique about this whole accident is that we have, in the history of maritime transport, we have, I can't recall a single instance where we have engaged or involved ourselves with somebody who was involved in an accident and to understand their perspective about the accident. In the aviation sector, we normally do not have this opportunity for understandable reasons. But in the maritime world, although we have a lot of times we do have access and opportunity to interview or engage with these people, we generally don't do that. And to give you some perspective, on the first day we met him, his first reaction was that you are the first 2 people who came to me to speak to me at a professional level. So that tells you something about how the industry views accidents in general, which I found extremely intriguing and interesting both.
I do too. I actually find that's incredible. It's almost hard to believe. That's because the knowledge the vessel master would carry. Although I would think the conversations would have been difficult at best. But you want to tap into that knowledge to understand sort of the local rationale. And it's interesting that you moved chronologically. Can I ask you a question about that?
Absolutely, shoot it.
Did you move from the accident backwards, or did you start sort of at the beginning of the vessel master's career and move towards the accident? Did you move away from the smoke or towards the smoke?
Well, that's very interesting, Todd, and I see where you're coming from. And as I said, the idea was never to work back. It was more to understand the normal work.
Yeah.
The idea was to start from the beginning.
Yeah.
And even, because I'm a social scientist and anthropologist, to me, the most important thing, as I said to you in the beginning, was to understand him as a person and understand the situation before you start to understand the outcome of what happened.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so much more complete. You have such a better context-rich understanding of how they got to where they got to. What should we take from this? Not just from what you learned and the themes that arose, but what should we take from this for the overall maritime industry? What are the bigger lessons we need to be learning?
I think, Todd, there are many aspects to it, and we can talk about it. But I think one of the things is, and I think we have to engage with failures, and I think that came across. To me, it was always extremely important that if you want to build resilient systems of the future, you cannot ignore the input of people who have been involved in accidents. Now, of course, the society views it as something unnecessary, or even, I don't know, to some extent idiotic for some people. But I think if you want to build systems of the future that are resilient, I think it is extremely important to incorporate the views of such people. So that was one learning, of course. But there's many other things, Todd. One other thing is to understand what is a normal practice. In one of the quotes that you might want to play at a later stage, I sent it to you also. Have a look and see the helplessness as I see to explain the obvious. That this is what I do all the time. This is a passenger vessel, and this is what it does.
In general, we are performing a salute with a cruise line in reducing the speed, calling the maneuver operation, take the bow thruster on the bridge. You slow down the engine. You perform the salute at 5, 6, 7 knots maximum. This was not any kind of touristic navigation that was, let's say, this was simply a passage at 0.5 nautical miles from shore. Was not any special practice because we didn't have time to lose to slow down the engine, to go very close to the land. This is the same passage that you can perform when you go from Savona to Barcelona and you pass at 0.4 nautical miles from shore, or even when you navigate at full speed in Belt Channel in Copenhagen, where you are at 0.2 on each side from the land, and you are in restricted water. This was not the practice that you perform. Let's say you pay tribute to the island or to make the passenger happy, to offer an additional value to the cruise. Obviously, even if you are passing by at 0.5 nautical miles, still is interesting for the passenger to see for those that they are on the island. Let's say this was a normal practice to pass, let's say, close, but close is relatively close because we are talking here 1,000 meters far. Obviously, if you speak to a captain of a tanker, of a very large crude carrier, where they never see the land, even when I was an officer on a very large cruise carrier, you have a different parameters to establish the distance. But when you are a cruise ship captain, and you on daily basis you navigate through the Venice Channel, fjords, the fjords in the South Pole, Ushuaia, big channel, and so it was nothing so special, just to make a course deviation on a waypoint at 0.5 nautical miles from the bathymetric of 10 meters from the land. It was not a difficult.
And initially you asked me the question about economics and how you relate that with safety. So to which my response was, one cannot understand safety without understanding how the business model works. So the point, putting it in context, is that when you start to explain the obvious, that this is a passenger vessel and this is what it does. It goes close to the land, and this is how you achieve customer satisfaction and things like that. So that helplessness to explain it shows you the disconnect between work as imagined and work as done, which is fantastic. I mean, not fantastic in the sense, but it's fascinating to learn the disconnect. But to me, as somebody, sorry.
Well, I actually think you're right. It is somewhat fantastic that our imagination of how work happens versus how work actually happens is so incredibly different.
Indeed. And, of course, this is a topic that has been researched for many years now, and we are seeing a lot more interest in this area. But to me, an even bigger question is that why is it that we are not able to pick up these normal practices or work as done before something happens? And that is something that really interests me. So what is it that we are missing here? The governance tools that we use, the inspections and audits and all that stuff. Why is it that we are not able to uncover this such an obvious thing? And that is really interesting to me. But if I flip it around and be in that position where he is and ask the question before something happens. So hypothetically speaking, if I'm an inspector and if I go on board before an accident happens and ask the question, do you ever go close to the land? The answer will be no, we don't. We have never done that. And the thing is, Todd, what is also interesting is not that people are lying or hiding something from you. They're 100% convinced that they are actually following the procedures. And this is extremely very interesting. That it's not, again, I'll repeat that, it's not that people are lying. They are 100% convinced that they are following work as prescribed or as imagined. And I struggle to understand this. But the thing is, again, it takes a while and it takes a certain approach, a certain temperament to get people to talk about what do they do? What is it that they do?
What'd you think? I told you this is a really good podcast. I really appreciated the ability to use that sound clip in the middle of the captain of the Costa Concordia. I'm sure you figured out who that was. I didn't feel any need to interrupt and tell you. You're smart people. You're able to sort of discern who that was. I just think this conversation and some of the ensuing things about this conversation, the fact that nobody really had talked to this vessel master is amazing. Talk to them to understand the context and how they're feeling and what was going on there, the local rationale. I'm sure lots of liability people and law enforcement people, those people talk to him. But to understand the failure, that's pretty important. And that makes NIppin's research really interesting. And he's going to be in the United States a couple times this year. If you get a chance to see him take it, that whole notion of bridge resource management and what normal looks like, That's a mystery we have not yet solved. That's got some time on it. That's for sure. Thank you, NIppin. I appreciated your time on the podcast. I also appreciate you for listening. Tell your friends, subscribe, do all that stuff you're supposed to do. Write a review, but only good ones. Only good ones. Until then, my friends, learn something new every single day. I bet you did today. Have as much fun as you possibly can. And for goodness sakes, be safe.